How do you use your senses to navigate the world? Maybe you look for cars before crossing the street. You hear your friends call out, "We're over here," when you arrive at the coffee shop. When you get home, you smell cooking and someone definitely made your favorite meal. You even know how much force to bite with when you chew that very first bite. Your ability to sense in numerous ways is integral to your being and survival, and those senses have been incorporated into your evolution for hundreds of millions of years. However, there was a time when your most ancient ancestors didn't have as finely tuned senses as you do today. 375 million years ago, the first limbed fish began to crawl into land and marked the beginning of vertebrate world domination. This wasn't without challenges, though, as these creatures had to evolve in order to survive outside of water, and oftentimes they were fighting with gravity itself in order to walk on land. It would take nearly 50 million years before the first representatives of the reptile and mammal lineages evolved in a fully terrestrial world. But just because those creatures learned how to cope with living on land itself doesn't mean that they were great at it. These archaic reptiles still weren't great at doing everyday things like chewing, smelling. They didn't even have proper ears to hear with. Life outside of water seemed to take a little bit of time to cope with. This is where I focus my research. I target this stage of evolutionary history to better understand the phases that a vertebrate animal must pass through in order to perceive on land. To do this, I targeted an ear bone called the stapes, this tiny little bone hidden within the skull of modern reptiles, and I traced its evolutionary history back to these archaic ancestors. In living reptiles, the stapes is this thin, delicate, and rod-like bone, perfect for transmitting high-frequency sound waves on land. This allows a modern reptile to perceive high-pitched sounds like the tiniest squeaks and the buzzings of insects. Sounds a little bit like dinner. I found that this bone has an unusual origin in these archaic reptilian creatures. They weren't using it to hear at all, but instead were using the stapes to support the inner elements of the skull. In the past, this bone was big and bulky and great at offering structural support, like what you see on the left side of the evolutionary tree, but they were just lousy at hearing. Only later throughout reptile evolution is this bone slowly and gradually co-opted to hear. And you can make out the subsequent physical changes to this bone as you move to the right side of the tree. This inspires me because knowing the path that evolution took to improve hearing can give us insights on how to create novel technologies and surgical techniques to improve hearing impairment. This work has further motivated me to continue working on sensory evolution, and now I'm determining how it is that our most ancient ancestors developed more efficient chewing mechanisms to target bigger, better, and more delicious prey. The evolutionary refinement of just a few fundamental anatomical features allowed for ancient reptiles and ancient mammals to eventually come to their senses to enjoy the global success that we do today. Thank you.